how did we cope up with the industrial policy that has been in place? So the first one, why, when did we, what are we going to talk about this in this lecture is we'll be talking about the activities in and around the policies that has been related to the agriculture industries and nearby policies. And we will be discussing about agricultural policy during British era or 5 years plans with where their main agenda or their main scope is around agriculture and development of industries like basically industrialization and land reform, sealing acts, and industrial policy of 1948, 1956, and 1991. So let us why do we need this industrial or agricultural policy? First, let us talk about agriculture. So basically, till date we know that the almost all 70% or 70 plus percentage of population that has been residing in rural, and agriculture has been the main source for the income for most of these families. So in that way, agriculture is considered as a backbone of Indian economy. So agriculture plays a crucial role in putting their effort in maintaining the economy intact. So then next one, let us talk about agricultural policies and in a way, how does this agricultural policy led to the development of rural areas and things that have been in progress. So, first and second 5 year plan. You all are aware about 5 year plans, right? Immediately after the independence. So, the government which came in power has started to develop these 5 years plans. So, for 5 years, they're going to make an agenda and going to focus on that agenda till those 5 years. Like their priority keeps changing. First year, they will be targeting agriculture or the certain industrial processes in such a way that, so more or less, they'll be having this target areas to focus on through 5 years plan. So this first and second 5 year plan has just we got independence, and the main economy is run through agriculture and agricultural based industries. So the 5 year plan first and second, their main agenda was to increase irrigation, and this in a way to lead for the increase in productivity in agriculture. So what happens? So if there's an increase in irrigation or increase in productivity or increase in the yield, would definitely lead to the increase in economy. So this first and second 5 year plans give special focus on irrigation, precondition for increased productivity in agriculture. Now what happened? They established an commission or an authority to look into how are these plans are implemented or how do they formulate or how do they come up with, there's a necessity for certain policy that must be looked into, is planning commission. So planning commission now later after 19 or 14, it's been replaced by Niti Aayog. You all know that. So planning commission, we are talking about when it was set up in 1950. So the central important role of this planning commission is to prepare 5 year plans and look towards the policy implementation, look towards the development of this themes that they have come up with in 5 year plans. So the major focus was basically on this agriculture, industries, and irrigation. So this 5 years plan, first and second major agenda was to improve agricultural yield, improve industrial purposes, and improve irrigation and productivity. So how did they improve agriculture was they kind of modernized the agriculture. So this modernization of agriculture, what does it mean? Was what do we call it? Improve or inducing modern technologies or inducing modern machinery so that the time taken or the manpower that was needed or the expenses that they were looking out for the sources could be cut down little and focus on the produce. So this basically led to importance to in the modernization of agriculture, cooperative farming alongside the community development of the rural development. So this first and second 5 year plans, their main agenda was to modernize agriculture and improve cooperative farming alongside community development. So they basically said rural development was also on their mind. So policy measures and planning processes. How did it happen? So how did it happen? Uh, it's been implemented through certain elements. Okay, first let us talk about technology. So technology can be used in agriculture to do what? To do increase the irrigation yield and to improve the productivity, certain new methods were introduced. So, what are these certain new methods? Are extensive irrigation facilities to areas which are not covered for cultivation. So, special criteria or special attention to those places or areas where irrigation facilities are not up to the mark or not better, where they thought if irrigation facilities are targeted properly, they could increase the yield required. Okay. So, in order to do that, there has to be a survey, there has to be something the policy makers to reach to understand the facilities that could be pushed through. So, in a way, this helped the policymakers to understand how better they can improve the irrigation facilities. The next one was done through Land Reform Act. So the land reform, the basic idea of land reform was to abolish the intermediary elements in land. Land reform was specially made to abolish the zamindari system, where the most of the yield or most of the produce was taken by these middlemen, and basically the agricultural farmers were left with they could be called as the landless. So the amount of effort they were putting in and the yield they were getting in was not tallying, because the accumulation of land by these zamindars who grabbed land through power or through extensive over a period of time through force. So this land regulation acts or land reforms led to the abolition of zamindari system or jagirdars. Okay, this land reforms were intended to bring total transformation in entire agrarian society. So what happens is the government took land from the zamindars and distributed among the people or among the landless, so that they could be the owners of their own land and focus on the agricultural facilities or irrigation facilities to produce more yield. So this production of more yield in a way would lead to um, increase in India's GDP. As we all know that agriculture is the backbone of our economy. So this in a way benefits the India in general. Okay. So the land reforms were intended to bring particular transformation, and these acts imposed land ceiling and distribute land to the landless. So that's what we have read. Then next one is cooperative farming and consolidation of land holdings. So this is led to what? This actually to prevent fragmentation of land in terms of land ceilings, and agricultural policy introduced programs of cooperation and consolidation of holdings. So this cooperative farming, where little fragmentations of the land would lead to the disbursement of resources, or the smaller areas that which could be improved with machinery, was consolidated through agricultural policy. The next one, what happens is this is meant to bring the small and marginal farmers to reap the benefits of larger scale farming. So in cooperative farming, suppose there are small pockets of land among 5 or 10 farmers, which is very small, where they could not use the machinery that was intended to be used in order to have a greater produce. So for them to come together and plow it or irrigate it together as a community could be beneficial in both to the farmers and both to the economy. So where they can use the machinery which could be intended to use in a larger area. So they introduce cooperative farming and consolidation of land holdings. Then it helps them pool their land resources. So this in a way leads to joint cultivation. What happens in joint cultivation? See, suppose we'll talk from perspective of joint family and small family. Not that I'm supporting joint family or small family, but here we are talking about the joint cultivation. But in a better example, in joint families or in nuclear families, if there are like 4 people that or 8 people that's supposed to be living in a joint family, where the income would be divided among them, or resources would be divided among them, or the house rent supposedly they has to be paying would be divided among everybody else. But if the same 8 members has to be shifted or split into 4-3-3 like that, or 4-3-2 or 4-2-2, then there would be a 3 households, right? So these 3 households separate rent, separate activities must be looked by themselves. Like the centralization of activities here would be dissolved or devolved around everybody else. So they could the resources were split. Suppose like two in place of one, there are now three. Okay, and smaller things which could not benefit them in a longer run or implement or could increase the spending more. So, but if we compare it with the land holdings, if all these smaller landholder farmers come together and do cooperative farming, this can improve their yield. They can make use of the machinery. So, the credit facility and institutional finance. Now, first, we have read about the policies, then cooperation for cooperative farming and consolidation. The next one is credit facility. You might have had this question like, okay, fine, there's an improvement, industrialization or big machinery they could use, but what about the funding? What about the credit that, what if they don't have credit in hand? How are they supposed to farm? So for that, institutions were set up. What does this institution do? So these institutions will give credit or give loans to the farmers for producing or for irrigation purposes for the yield of current period. So these farmers could make use of this, do the yield or produce, then sell that produce, then the extra money that could be used to pay the loan, and the extra could be used for them necessary, and it keeps the economy money flowing. So it was extended by cooperatives and commercial banks. And in 1969, Nationalization Act, Bank Nationalization Act, was made to cater the needs of farmers. So the nationalization of banks led to the uh, credit facilities, improve the credit facilities to the farmers. So regional rural banks were also established to provide credit to the agricultural sectors, and NABARD was also established. NABARD is what? National Bank for Agricultural and Rural Development. So these credit facilities were provided through cooperative banks, commercial banks, regional rural banks, and NABARDs. Now support prices and procurement. Now that okay, land was given, the joint or community farming was also done, or separate farming was also done. Then credit was also given. Now what? Now what happens after the yield is done? So now am I gonna get the market price, or am I gonna have to sell the the yield lesser or more than the investment that I've put in this farming? So for that, support prices and procurement was established. This procedure was established by the government, which looks into to ensure that the farmers were given fair prices. Okay. So to this was basically made to so that the farmers won't be at loss. Okay. So they are supposed to get their yield, or they are supposed to get the investment bank back. So years of surplus also, prices do not tumble and farmers do not suffer losses. So this support prices main agenda, if in times of surplus produce, also government is supposed to look into that farmers are not suffered, or farmers are not meant to lose the investments or get the negatives then they have invested in the farming. Then policy of Commission for Agricultural Cost Price in recent years is to announce fairly high prices in a bid to provide incentive to the farmers to expand production. So what happened over a period is these farmers, in order for them to boost or in order for them to get a profit, the procurement was done at little higher prices. Okay, so the investment more than the market prices, they were procured at a little higher prices so that farmers get the extra profits. So these profits could intendedly put back into the farming where they were encouraged to produce more, and this product yield could in a way make the economy flourish. Okay, this is all cyclical. You have to understand this on a cycle, on a circle. Okay. Then subsidies to agriculture. So this is next point. So policy of subsidization of agriculture in terms of inputs like irrigation, fertilization, and power. So subsidies are given in terms of perspectives of what? The fertilization subsidies or irrigation facilities or power. We all know that the free electricity or continuous supply of electricity to the farmers could make or break your vote bank. We all have seen in the governments that have come up in our Telugu states. So subsidies, fertilization, irrigation, and power supply. So the main purpose, anyway, the main agenda is to increase the agricultural production by encouraging the use of modern inputs in agriculture. So in a way, if I'm giving subsidy to the irrigation facilities, then they would buy new machinery, they would buy uh, new equipments or new technologies that could in a way improve the agricultural yield. So either subsidies would in a way to encourage the modern inputs in agriculture. So next one is rural employment schemes. Now that the farming is a cyclical and only for a limited time or for 3 months, then break, then 3 months, or it's based on a monsoon cycle. So other times, what are these farmers supposed to do? So for them, the rural must, the scheme, certain schemes have to be done. And also these rural employment schemes would in a way led for these people with lower economic background, make uplift them, and with the money or the salary that they earn through these schemes could help them buy the yield that's been produced by the farmers. So this is all cycle, put it in a cycle, then only you'll understand. So now what happens? This poor rural pool must be enabled to acquire the purchasing power. Purchasing power to do what? To purchase the yields, to purchase the irrigation yield that's been produced by the farmers. So for this purpose, large scale poverty elevation programs were introduced. What are these poverty elevation and the rural development employment programs? Small farmers development agencies, National Rural Employment Program, Rural Landless Employment Guarantee Program, and Jawahar Rozgar Yojana, and National Rural Employment Guarantee Schemes. With certain schemes and programs, this in a way tried to uprise the purchasing power of the rural people, which in turn would lead them to buy the yield produced by the farmers. So what happens? So if their yield is produced, sorry, bought by the farm, yield produced by the farmers is bought by these rural people. This in a way lead to the farmers income, increase in income, and with increase in income, this farmers in the next cycle could invest all those things into the agriculture again. So this in a way does what? It brings the economy, it brings the money back into the economy and keep the economy cycle running. So this is all cyclical. I hope you're following the class. So let us talk about what is National Agricultural Policy. So National Agricultural Policy, National Agricultural Policy, NAP. NAP is basically to strengthen rural infrastructure in a way which accelerates the agriculture and prompt agro businesses, create employment, achieve a fair standard of living for farmers and agricultural workers. So NAP targets both farmers and agricultural workers to do what? To improve their employment, to improve their livelihood, and to accelerate the agricultural development. Then policy statement. So what does this policy aim to attain? So what are the schemes or what are the provisions of this policy? First one is growth rate in excess of 4% per annum in agricultural sector. So this supposed to be having this increase in 4% of agricultural profits or agricultural growth rate per uh, annum, okay, per year. Then growth that is based on efficient use of resources. So this also calls for sustainable and efficient use of resources and conservation of soil, which would not lead to the environmental destruction, water and biodiversity. And this is growth with equity. What is growth with equity? This growth which is widespread across regions and farmers. The next is, what are the main provisions of National Agricultural Policy? What are the main provisions of NAP? NAP is do what? This is to do local specific and economically improved varieties of farm. So this they wanted to improve the local based and local specific so that it is more sustainable in nature rather than introducing a foreign or hybrid, or what do we call that word? I forgot that word, but hybrid. Yeah, I think it's a scientific term. I hope I'll remember by the end of the class. Yeah. So, and livestock species and aquaculture. So, reviewing the excise duty on farm machinery and implements and fertilizers. So subsidies, fertilizer subsidy, and the excise duty on buying farm machinery or implements which could improve the agriculture, they are also looked into. So everything is given little subsidy so that it could not be more burden on the farmers. And their main agenda, their sole agenda is to minimize the price fluctuations. Okay, so that in a way, this keeps the economy steady and also the farmers' income flowing. Otherwise, if they are getting one time higher price or other time the smaller price, this would discourage. And if they get higher yield for any produce, and it would lead for every other farmer in the area to produce the same, which would in a way after the produce would lead to the drop of price as it is available more in the society or easily available. So this would eventually does loss to them. So then national livestock breeding strategy. So what is this? It is done to meet the demands of, you all know what's livestock. So livestock is basically meat, milk, egg and livestock projects. So what does this livestock does is its rural electrification as a prime mover. Then private sector investment in areas like agricultural research, resource development, and post-harvest management and marketing. See, not just the production is important, but the post-harvest management is also crucial. So what if there are perishables like vegetables, fruits, which if not consumed in a day would be spoiled. So for them, they need to be a post-harvest management and also marketing of them, because there's little time and little scope left. This has to be done very soon. So this livestock breeding strategy, these main provisions are of National Agricultural Policy. So marketing tactics or marketing strategy is also one of their provisions. Then insurance. Yes, insurance is the main important thing for the farmers, and privatization of agriculture and price protection of farmers. Removal of restrictions on movement on agricultural commodities. So if restrictions are removed on agricultural commodities, this would lead to no, the procurement of yield at a very easy or very better time, and also the produce will not be spoiled and it could be procured as a very higher price. So now next one is industrial policies. So we have read about agricultural policies. So the industrial policy, this is looked through. So this is looked through first, second, and third 5-year plans. All these three plans' main agenda was expand the huge and large scale industries throughout India. So I'll just talk about industrial policy of 1948. So industrial policy of 1948. What do they do? State-owned industries. So they came up with state-owned industries, mixed sector, and new undertakings, and area or field of only governmental control. So let us talk about state-owned industries. State-owned industries are what? Industries which are usually known as public sector and undertaking. These are owned by the government. So these are called, oh, okay, sorry. So these are called, so these are what? Arms, military, atomic energy, nuclear energy, rail, transport. These are all state-owned. So rail transport, this is still state-owned sectors where the government has it most of the public undertaking, like it holds majority of it, like 51% share of it. Then mixed sector. Mixed sector is what? Six industries were specified: coal, steel, aircraft, ship building, manufacturing of telephone, telegraph, and wireless apparatus, and mineral oils. So this sector encourages both private and public sector industries where the share could be divided. Then new undertakings to be set up by the government, but the existing private undertakings were allowed to continue for 10 years. See, although it was state owned, immediately after taking under state undertaking the control of it. So what happens to the already existing private players in that field? They are allowed to continue for 10 years, where government will review the situation and take the companies. And if companies are at loss, or they could be compensated. So there's every provisions at every step by the government that put up in place. So then area or field of government control. So 18 industries of national importance were listed in this category, and government did not own the responsibility of developing them. So what are those? Those industries are automobiles, heavy chemicals, heavy machinery, fertilizers, electrical engineering, sugar, paper, cement, cotton, and woolen industries. Then area of private sector. What are these? The industry is not incorporated in the above categories. Like the remaining rest of the industries that have been left are looked into by the private sector. Then Industries Development Regulation Act 1951. What is this? So this parliament to regulate the process of industrial development in the country. So the parliament came up with a law saying that this process of industrial development is crucial for our country now, as we need this rapid industrial growth or industrialization, as we have already been backward due to drain of wealth. So they came up with this act known as Industries Development and Regulation Act 1951. So this came into force in 1952. So what does this do? So this is intended to regulate the private sector. So what does the act focus on? It regulates, protect small entrepreneurs, then avoid concentration and monopoly, and balance the regional development. So this avoids the monopoly. This makes the balance between all the players has to be there. So what happens in monopoly is the price could be fixed by the only available company that has been producing. So in that way, what better? Why do we need to have a policy? So the act avoids the concentration, and it wants healthy competition so that the price could be maintained properly. Then Industrial Policy Revolution 1956. So what? They are to increase the rate of growth, to increase the pace of industrialization, to promote and establish heavy industry and machine making industry. Now that the India wanted to been focusing or have come through the agricultural as a main strategy, it wanted to focus and develop these heavy scale industries which could be used by the machineries, building industries, and etc. So a policy, industrial policy of 1956 have come into place. And this is to promote and establish heavy industries and machine making industries. So now what? What happens? This lead to increase and expand the scope of public sector industries, and to minimize and reduce inequalities in income and wealth, as unemployment could be tackled and poverty could be eliminated through the establishment of industries where work availability or job availability is promised. This leads to the reducing inequalities and to boost large and growing cooperative sector. So this in a way both reduces the poverty, gives the employment opportunities, and also uh, boost the cooperative sector. Then to reduce and prevent monopolies, reducing or preventing monopolies is the main agenda of any industrial policy. But if we talk about the mobile network today, now there are only two existing companies or three. Uh, the third one share is little or decreasing. So it's Geo, it's Airtel, and you might have seen the prices that have been hiked, and there's as you know other companies or competitors left. Now whatever price they fix, that is a final one. So there's no bargaining, there's no competition. Then to reduce monopolies and concentration of wealth and income in the hands of small number of individuals. So they better wanted it to be increased to a larger scale rather than making it to only the smaller number of individuals. Then classification of industries. How do we classify these industries? So state shall have total monopoly over these 17 industries. Okay. Exclusive state monopoly. So 17 industries are only under state control, or they should be looked by only the state. So what are these? Out of which four industries are arms, ammunition, and atomic energy and railway. Then air transport, where the government monopolies remaining of the 13 industries, and new units were established by the law. So arms, ammunition, atomic energy, railway, transport are all government uh, monopolistic industries. There's no space for private partners. Then mixed sector of public and private enterprises. So what are these mixed sector of public and private enterprises? So what happens here is this mixed sector of public and private enterprises. The government and both the private participants are allowed to participate, and in these industries are what? Minerals, road transport, sea transport, machine tools, ferroalloys, tool steels, drugs, dry stuffs, plastics, antibiotics, fertilizers, chemical, pump and electric, etc. So the carbonization of coal, aluminum and other non-ferrous metals also. Now let us talk about jurisdiction of private sector. So all industries not listed in Schedule A and Schedule B, they're included in third category. Who are this third category? They are open for the private sector. And state recognizes the private participation and initiative of this private sectors. And but this doesn't mean that these are only solely has to be controlled by the private. Government at any point can take over or can establish monopoly in such industry if it thinks that uh, it is important for the for the security or national issues. So in 1956, industrial policy sought to strengthen the mixed economy structure. Then reduction of regional disparities and internal balances is the main agenda. What happens here is if concentration of industries or policy has been fixed on certain pockets, then it leads to the development or improvement of only that particular states. But rather, if they are distributed all over the places, all over the district, all over the states, then this could lead to the overall development, not just the power concentrated in few regional parts or few pockets. So, new industrial policy 1991. What is new industrial policy 1991? It is a major shift. This is a drastic shift. Why? Because 1991, what happened in 1991? What happened? Liberalization, globalization, and privatization happened. Then disintegration of Soviet led to the LPG. And with LPG, opened up borders, opened up communications. So the main concern of this new policy was to build on gains already made. As it's cited 50, till 91, the years passed by, they wanted to take advantage of all the 5-year plans where the industry Yeah, industrial development was the main agenda. They wanted to make use of the the outcomes or the fruits or the benefits of these policies. So they correct distortions or weaknesses that might have created a sustained growth and gain employment and attain international competitiveness. So their main agenda is to look for a sustainable growth, sustainable productivity, and increase in employment opportunities, and also be a competition on an international space. Like the other countries should look for your industries as a competition to them. So why would they look for you as a competition? Is with better men, with better equipment, with better technology. So in a way, it's improvement of industries at in our place. Then government, what did it do is it announced a series of initiative in respect of policies. So these policies are related to industrial licensing. So the license till then, which led to sorry, which led to the monopoly. Now the private sectors, everything could buy the license and be the take control of the industries and set up industries. Then public sector policy. So the policies which have been intended for improvement of public life or to look into the betterment of people or enhance the economic growth, the public sector policy has been improved. Then MRTP Act, then foreign investment and technology. So this led to FII. So foreign investment in India. Why it happened is foreign investment in India led to this foreign opening up of borders led for the foreigners, foreign capitalists or foreign fund which could act as a credit for the industrialists in India and to establish industries in India. So what happens if they establish industries in India? This in a way produce uh, this in a way gives what happens this in a way leads to the employment generation or development of technologies at hometown, which leads to the revival of economy. Okay, then MRTP is monopoly restriction. So this restricts monopoly and trade practices. So they, since the earlier stage, the industries that have been having the monopoly over certain sectors, now with the industrial licensing have become common, and this licensing led to every new player could take up the industrial license, and the healthy competition would lead to better production or reduce in prices rather than having a monopoly of single industry or single player in that field. So monopolies and restrictive trade practices. So what did we learn in here is agricultural industrial policy. So agricultural and industrial policy, because we consider industries. So yeah, we have read about agricultural policy, British 5-year plans, and agriculture has been a main backbone. Then comes agricultural policies and rural development, where the 5-year plan's main agenda is to, okay, the where 5 years plan main agenda is to look for the rural development, etc. So, and also major focus of agriculture was industrial irrigation and modernization of agriculture. Importance was given to cooperative farming. This is very crucial. Cooperative farming was encouraged. previously. Then policy measures or planning processes. Then how is this uh, tackled? So technology, which would lead to the extensive irrigation facilities and land reforms to abolish zamindar system. Then land reforms for shifting entire agriculture. Okay, then distribute to the landless. Then cooperative farming and consolidation of land holdings, prevent fragmentation. So this fragmentation would lead to upholding a better share. So who are marginal or small farmers is those who have 2% of they are present 2% of the landholders. Then helps them pool their land resources, and the credit is a crucial one. So the credit facility or loan runamafi or loan waiving, you all know that loan waiving has been a greater burden on the government. So this has been a cyclical, and it led to these loans or credit extension facilities have led to the death of many farmers. Then regional banks, rural regional bank or the credit banks that would give credit to the farmers at lesser interest or anything. And also new technologies has been improved, like soil testing or satellite farming or looking into the weather, uh, or weather by the satellites where it's going to be early monsoons or the late monsoons. And also NABARD, all these banks look into the credit system. Then the support prices is an important one where if there's a procurement is done late and government had to compensate, this falls a burden on the government, right? So the farming was mainly established to cycle the economy or flow the money into it. But this procurement has been done not at the better prices, or if it's done more than the prices that's supposed to be buying, then it's in a way creating a burden on the government. And also, how far do we know that the farmers had got their money as per the yield, like how many farmers had got their profit? So eventually this profit or the money that they get has been put initially back into the next year's yield itself, right? But how far it could be done? Then main purpose is to increase agricultural production and use of modern inputs. Modern inputs are basically with soil testing or water harvesting programs or drip irrigation wherever necessary, or satellite, we have already read about. Then this schemes, certain schemes which would lead for the farmers to help understand. Then National Rural Employment Scheme. So this in a way to improve the buying power of the rural agricultural workers who in a way can buy the farmers' yields. Then so if we look at the limitations, see all the schemes that we have read through, if we look at the limitations, then what are those limitations are after following all these schemes. So these limitations are basically about the stagnation of manufacturing sector or distortions in industrial patterns or displacement of labor, absence of incentives for raising efficiency, or vaguely defined industrial location policy. See, even though there has been these policies has been pushed for, but there are negatives, there are drawbacks of any policies, right? So what happened with these NAPs or of 2000 or new industrial policy has been like this led to the stagnation of manufacturing sector. So this manufacturing sector has been stagnated since the 90s or etc. to push, it failed to push the GDP economy of the country. Then distortions in industrial flow owing to selective flow of investments. So what happens is investment of after liberalization led to few industries. So it led for the economy or income flow only to certain few industries, and rest of the other industries have been ignored. Okay. Sorry, today it's been like, so the rest of the other industries have been ignored, where they've been suffering or they've been trying hard to get the credit or hard to get the foreign investments, which could be improved in order to improve the production or generate employment, or if they are the what do we call essential industries that could be used by the economy for rotating its GDP, improving facilities, etc. Then displacement of labor, restructuring and modernization of industries led to displacement of labor. What happens with this modernized technique or modern agricultural? The demand for the manpower or agricultural workers have reduced as now machines have replaced the human being. So this led to what? This led to this migration of laborers or agricultural workers in search of employment, in search of livelihood. So this in a way put pressure or burden on the people, because during COVID you can all see the this affected the most of the agricultural workers or people who used to be earlier agricultural workers. With replacement of machinery or equipments led to their loss of job, they have come up to the cities in search of work as a day wage laborers or the daily laborers. They had to again go back due to lockdown restrictions, and we have seen people walking miles and miles, and all the horror stories that have followed. So this is one of the backdrop or one of the negative that the policy could have looked into. Okay, they should have been provided an alternative. And absence of incentives for raising efficiency. So this internal liberalization without adequate emphasis on trade policies resulted in consumption-led growth. It did not lead to export-led or investment-led growth. What happens? So it based on the income flow, sorry, investment flow to those industries where the consumption is high. So only in those purposes they got the investments, where the crucial industries where even if the consumption has to be low, but they do play a major role in India's economy, these have been ignored. So now this led to only based on how the consumption is starting or how the consumption cycle has been taking place. So investment has been flowing to only those industries. So this in a way led to only like one-sided development, or what do we call the partial development. And this industrial policy, this allocation policy, it failed to define proper industrial policy. Now what happens? Most of the industries do not follow these environmental rules or environmental sustainable rules. So they've been polluting. Example, Kodaikanal mercury poisoning. Okay, there has been an violent protest. There has been any protest that has been going on. So this Kodaikanal, and also the government could not do anything to the industry, which has been dumping its mercury waste into the landfills. So mercury poisoning is very crucial and very serious poisoning. So in spite of knowing that this industry has done, it did nothing. So because there is no proper policy, the environmental sustainable policies in lieu of agricultural policy, oh, sorry, in lieu of this industrial policy, they were just industries were just looked up as an money generating or employment or economy cycling industries only, economy cycling instruments only. They ignored the main concept of how their techniques or tactics could be sometimes harmful to the environment. So these are drawbacks and these are the policies. And yeah, tomorrow we'll come up with, I think, reservation education policy. I hope it's everyone's cleared. So, hmm, I'm looking up for if we could find any alternatives or current affairs. We're almost done with the class, so I'm logging out. So yeah, this is what we've read today. Agricultural and industrial policies crucial for shaping India's economy.